Hello and welcome back to Short Story Focus. Tonight I'll be continuing to take a look at the Hugo Awards. We started in the beginning back with Alamagusa, and we have now, which was in 1955, and we have now worked our way up to 1959, keeping in mind that 1957 took a miss. The story that we're going to be reviewing tonight is Robert Bloch's The Hellbound Train. So let's talk about, just for a second, why I consider this to be a good short story as compared to, say, the one I reviewed yesterday somewhat harshly. For instance, Avram Davidson's short story, which won a Hugo Award, none of the characters seek redemption in any way. There's nothing redemptive about it at all. Now, of course, not every story needs to have redemption, just like not every story needs to have people cutting each other up with swords, but I like both. To write a character who has absolutely no qualms about the way he is and does not question himself at all, you are entering, cardboard cutout territory that doesn't even deserve to be called a thumbnail sketch. In The Hellbound Train, in just the first page, the main character, who is Martin, has more character development and more to say and more to offer in some of these things that I'm talking about than in the previous three. The main character in the story, The Hellbound Train, is a man named Martin. And we start off very early in Martin's life. What you find is that he's reflecting on his father, who was a man who worked on the train lines. Although he did not work on the trains, he worked along the lines and he worked in the train yards, and he did so quite proudly. Now, by the by in the story, Martin's father is a drunk. One day he unfortunately mixes up the drinking and his job, and so then Martin becomes an orphan. So one tragedy after another besets Martin. As the story progresses and Martin takes a hard look at himself, he decides what he wants to do is what his father did, and that is he wants to go work on the rail lines. And he winds up becoming actually a hobo. There was a word used in the story, right on page 1 of the story, that I had never seen before, and so I had to look it up. Bindle stiffs are what they're called. So a bindle stiff is a hobo, specifically the hobo with the the stick over the shoulder and the bundle wrapped up, kind of like you thought about when you were a kid. Well, when you were a kid in the 70s anyway. For all of his simplicity, Martin is someone who actually stops to consider things. What he realizes is that the hobo life isn't quite what he had hoped it would be. And in order to make ends meet as a hobo, sometimes lawlessness is the only way you can make a go at it, because he gets himself into trouble in one way or another. It is well done. The prose is great. The writing is nice. Robert Bloch is definitely a skillful wordsmith and a really fun storyteller would be the best way to describe it. But there's this really great scene that I do want to talk about a little bit, and I'm going to try not to spoil it, but it's just so cool I want to talk about it. Through a set of circumstances that, I want to try to keep this as mysterious as possible to not ruin your enjoyment, Martin finds himself on the tracks, which is an old familiar haunt for him that he had put behind him for a while. The title of the story is, of course, a legend. So he sees the legend come real. And the description of the legend in the story is really well done. It's a great piece of writing. And because it's a great piece of writing, I'm going to take a chance and read it to you here. But for the first train to come along from the other direction, roaring towards him along the track from the south, Martin peered ahead, but his eyes couldn't match his ears. And so far, all he could recognize was the sound. It was a train, though he felt the steel shudder and sing beneath his feet. And yet, how could it be? The next station south was Needham-Mensha, and there was nothing due out of there for hours. The clouds were thick overhead, and the field mist rolled like a cold fog in a November midnight. Even so, Martin should have been able to see the headlight, and the train rushed on. But there was only the whistle screaming out of the black throat of night. Martin could recognize the equipment of just about any locomotive ever built, but he'd never heard a whistle that sounded like this one. It wasn't signaling. It was screaming like a lost soul. The rest of that is a really great piece of writing. And then Martin gets to meet with the conductor. The rest of the story plays out like a Faustian bargain. The trope of the deal with the devil, the folk smart American reliable dependable man sort of thing, like the whole like mythos that's built up around that, which of course has its lineage in the European stories of the same manner of people outsmarting elves, dwarves, demons, the devil himself, different things like that. This story certainly plays out some of those things, and it finds its own resolution in those things. This is an excellent short story. This is definitely how the short stories should be done. Great character development. There are interesting plot elements that make you sink into this story, and you actually jump down into the depths of a world that is created. And once Robert Bloch pulls you down into the depths, he doesn't let you up for air till the story's over. So I recommend this story, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for stopping by and checking out this review of The Hellbound Train by Robert Bloch. I really do appreciate it, and have a good day.